What's up, everyone? So today we are installing a 22mm carb onto our pit bike. And the reason for that is because we know that these carbs that are on these pit bikes already aren't always the best. So, as far as the adjustability and all that, it seems like everybody in our group has had a little bit of an issue getting the stock carb to get, happy with, an aftermarket pipe and a BBR U-Flow air intake. So you have to go and buy. Now I know people slot it. You could do multiple things to get away from having to buy this, but you got to buy this D socket, is what they call it, so you can adjust your air fuel ratio on this thing. Now, I guess the positive side of, as far as on this carburetor I'm looking at, is that at least it's on the side. Looking at this new carb that we bought, which we already have apart, is it's on the bottom. Oop, easy. Here we go. So, I'm being an idiot. There we go. So that will be our air fuel mixture screw, I believe, and that should be our idle on the side. So one nice thing is that the choke is on the correct side. I've seen that some people were buying Chinese carbs and they were actually complaining because their choke was on the wrong side of their bike. So then they had to kind of finagle as far as the cable to go on the opposite side, and it just looked like bundles of fun that I just wasn't ready to have yet. So to show you guys here, we always purchase from Faster Minis if we can. They are freaking awesome. As you see, we love them. 22mm carb, Mikuni, $80 here. First things first, we're gonna start breaking down this bike. Usually I just take my front fender off and I could snake my BBR intake off, and then we get to it a little bit like that, and I'm pretty sure that's all I'd have to do. And this is actually a little sheet here. Love BBR, by the way. They're if you can get your hands on their stuff, it's good. And their U-Flow intake is pretty cat's meow for sure. It's definitely an investment for sure for 130 bucks. If you watch my other video, I'll talk a little bit more about details and nitpicking, but blah blah blah. So here's our sheet here saying that if we are running a Klx110 with a stock carb, which we are not, we already were bumped up to a 22mm, a BBR pipe, obviously a pro circuit, our main jet should be around 100 to 105. We are at 95. So I would think we should be at 105. So we're way off already. So maybe with the 95 in there we get away with it, but if we get away with it, that's almost saying that like our pro circuit pipe's junk and we need to get a BBR pipe, if it's that much of a difference. So I'm going to probably skip through most of the parts here that are easy, as far as you don't need to know how to take off a front fender, shroud, plastics. You should be able to figure that out. But once we get into the details of pulling the carb out and stuff like that, I'll try to help you guys along, show you what you need to do, and then we're going to get actually inside the carb and see what has to actually be done. So let's get at this and see what happens. I've honestly only done this once before, but we're going to try it again because it worked out pretty good last time. Get it propped up like that. Voila! I mean, don't rock the boat, you know what I mean? Oh, you're thinking, genius. I know. Alright, so before you remove the carb, some of the things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to shut off your fuel, and then preferably drain the fuel out of the bottom of your carb and all that before you actually remove it, so you don't spill it all over the place, causing a mess or some type of fire hazard. We did pull our fuel lines off. We still have our choke cable hooked up, and we made sure some of these, our vent tubes and all that, were loose before we started taking this apart. But we're gonna undo it from the throttle body here, and then we're gonna undo our carb, or our throttle up here, and then we're gonna start pulling it out, and then we're gonna see what we have to do to get the choke lever off. If we could just disconnect it from here, if it doesn't matter, because technically the unit on this guy over here is completely different. So it's just a flip lever, which actually it's not even a bad spot either. It's actually pretty decent, so I'm not too worried about just leaving that on there. I mean, it's only for warm-ups anyways, so you shouldn't have to use it that much. So yeah, let's go and get the rest of this carb off here. If I'm realizing one of the things I actually did that should be on my last video but I didn't post was one of the things with the BBR intake was that your coil here is actually supposed to be mounted further this way. Actually, it's been a while, I forgot the actual location of it, but I didn't like the location of it because it pressed so far into the air filter that I didn't like it. So that's what you kind of see me struggling with it. I had a zip tie to actually the choke here. So the easiest way to get this choke off is you'll pull back this little rubber protector guy here, and you'll see that's adjustable. And what you'll do is you just thread that out. We had some our knips here on the other side of it, on that nut, but you can see how it's slotted here, so it's meant to come out. We'd actually started taking out the one screw, and then there's another screw, and it started to strip out on us. So no bueno. But thankfully, I don't think I'll have to mess with that screw. I should be able to put that other one right back in with that ground, since we won't be using the choke anymore, because there's no going back to stock at this point. We already got our carb off. Now we gotta put the other one on. So we're gonna get at her. But I think we're gonna do is we are gonna put that stock carb on. Well, not stock carb, the 22mm carb, and we are gonna run the stock jets in there and just see, you know, maybe we could tune her in enough, and maybe she'll be enough. So hopefully we don't have to put too much of the bike back together. But next thing we do have to work on is seeing if we could actually get our needle and the top of our housing to fit onto the next carb. So we're gonna get at that, see what happens, and we'll get back at you. All right, so we definitely are running through a couple snags, but we are also working through them. But I kind of want to show you how this carb is set up and how the chokes are different. The one I honestly don't know a lot about, this plunger style setup of a choke, but I could see exactly what they're getting at as far as performance reasons. So obviously this one's our new carb. And ooh, too much, there we go, perfect light. So you can see, look how clean it is, like airflow's going in through here. It's perfect, right? Looks good. Now, you look at this one here. There we go, there's some good light. You can see how it's got the ridges here. It's got this big flap, which is actually your choke, which is all's restricting air. While this one over here is really smooth and just meant to flow air best as possible. So, and that's where it goes into the style, the style choke here, which is more of a plunger setup. And another great news was, because I was looking through all these boots here, through our buddy's BBR intake, which is good. Thank you for having this still here, by the way. So they gave us boots for a stock 26 and a 28 mil, which I'm like, shoot, like we got a 22 mil. We don't, you know, like is a stock one gonna actually work? Fits like a glove. So I was just starting to look. I'm like, I'm gonna have to buy a boot. I got to start buying a throttle cable, buy jets. It's not worth it. I was gonna tell you guys right now, like, not worth it. But that boot does work, so that's a good one. So we're good there. Which also means I would assume that your stock intakes in general are gonna work on this 22mm carb, that you won't have to bump up to a bigger one. I believe that's what that would mean. Next thing will be our throttle linkage. So we're gonna look at that and see what happens. So bad news. The job is going very well so far, and everything is cooperating with us, which could only mean that something is going to go very, very wrong. But till then, we're gonna keep rolling with it. So before I actually button this all back together, I wanted to show you exactly what we kind of did, or as far as explain it to you. So after you took this off your carb, you seen that you had this piece hanging with a spring attached. If you don't know how to pull that off, you're not going to hurt anything too much, but I'm not even an expert at taking them off. Thankfully, I haven't had to do too much of it. But what I did is, as far as I curled the spring up, I compressed as much as I could. And then if you see this guy right here, what you're going to want to do is, instead of pulling on it, you're actually going to want to push it. And you're going to see it. It's actually going to come through that little hole. And then you actually slide the cable through the outside. And then don't be afraid, you're fine. You can go ahead and let go of that afterwards. It's not gonna like shoot up and spring inside or anything like that. You'll be good to go. And just make sure you don't get your springs mixed up. I mean, I only say that because I have my spring laying right there, which I obviously set this one right next to it afterwards, you know, because that was a smart move, right? So the only other thing I'm kind of concerned about is that you have your throttle body, your intake here, I'm sorry, and you have this plastic piece which is right here, and I'm going to show you guys, and I don't know if it's just right or it's not right. Let's say it goes on like this. There we go. So you can see there is just a smudge of possible air gap there. Now, they did not say anything about needing anything aftermarket, nor do I see anything sold aftermarket for these. So I'm going to assume, just because it is technically on the outer side of the rubber seal, that it should be making enough contact where it is sealing that up. I'm a little uneasy about the way that is. I wish that covered more. But I think we're just going to roll with it. And obviously, if there's an air gap, you know, we'll know pretty quick. And we'll even test it. Maybe we can spray a little carb cleaner around it just to make sure that it's not sucking anything in. Because if you do that, and if it revs up higher, you'll know that it's definitely taking, there's definitely an air gap there. So I don't know if I actually specified or not, but that top is going to work. And the reason why it's good that it's going to work is because it has the elbow and everything like that. And it's not as easy to replace and put this on here, because I don't think you can, you know, I never had good luck in trying to keep that elbow stuff, because usually it's formed pretty much into that. Which I'm actually surprised it works, just because you could see the difference. Obviously, this one being our newer one. So the other thing I'm going to try to show you guys, see if I get enough light. If you see that clip down there, you see how it's V'd to where it's open slotted? Well, if you don't, just pay attention and you'll see with that, golly, I want to show you guys that. Bear with me for a second here. All right, this one you can probably see a little bit better. So you see how that V is in there and how it's open on this side? That's going to allow you to be able to slip your needle in and all that. So I shouldn't say your needle, because there's your needle, but as far as your cable, it's going to allow you to slip your cable in there and actually make this whole function work. So I apologize for the, there you go, perfect right there, best example. So trying to help you guys out here a little bit, but we're going to hopefully hook this all up, and maybe we'll be able to fire this thing up tonight, wake the neighbors up. We actually ended up using our stock spring that was in our other carb for the 22mm, because the way it had a kind of groove to where it was supposed to slide in, this spring was a little bit fatter, so it didn't seem to affect anything as far as the clip down in that, and as far as the, we'll call it the, I don't know, the throttle sleeve or whatever you want to call that thing. But I use the stock spring. You could use your judgment, but as far as on the top cap, it fit way better. Actually, wow, this one doesn't even have a spot for it to groove in. It just sits in there. So all right, we got that figured out. We got the carb almost installed, and then what we realized, you see on your stock carb here, it has these square nuts in there, so when you slide the bolts through, it's just easy peasy, tighten up. But with this carb, it does not have that. So you need to have a bolt with a nut to screw these carbs on, which, alright, so this carb is literally pushing the limits in every area, because It is so tight on space, like I'd have to get the feeler gauge out to really mock that up as far as see what kind of clearance we got. The other thing was, I mean, it's just one thing after another. Like, I can't believe there's not a video on this. So here's your fuel hose, and because your fuel hose has already had someone, we'll just say larger at one point, she's already been kind of wallowed out a little bit. So best thing you could do if you're trying to just pinch pennies here is just clip that elbow off to where it's flush, and you should be able to route that down and put your clip on here. Personally, wouldn't recommend it, and if you're gonna do that, I would upgrade to at least get a something of a clamp that you could actually tighten down on instead of these quick ones here. I'm actually gonna go look and see if I got any fuel hose. Had the fuel on for a little bit, so that bowl should be full. Oh, dead battery. See what happens. I mean, I get that she might not run 100%. A little persuasion. About that slide might be up a little higher. Yeah. So I didn't know, it looked like there's a lot of air gap there. Let me get my flashlight. Let me see. Yeah. So you can see how there's such a big gap there. It just it didn't seem right to me at the time, because I was like, man, that thing should be going down further. What we had to do is we had our throttle here just a little too tight. So we loosened her up here. Well, technically we tightened her as far as threading inwards, and it lowered it down. So I'm running on fumes here on the battery, on the GoPro. So hopefully she fires up a little bit better. We'll see. Because it's lean, I really can't back this screw out too much more. Oh, actually, it's running a little bit better than I thought it would. So let me charge you guys up here. Let me play with this thing for a little bit, see where we're at. So our jets we got off Amazon. We were at our local shop, which we like to support. They were going to order them. They said they could possibly get them here by Thursday. We didn't want to necessarily take that risk. So we looked at our Amazon real quick, and we can get them even faster. So we ended up just buying some other stuff from them. I said, hey, let's get some good, SC1 spray. We get some, air filter cleaner. So I'll buy that from you guys, but I'm going to buy the jets real quick from Amazon. So there's no hard feelings there. We got way more jets than what we would have paid. So they were $5 a piece there, and we literally got 20 jets here for $10, which was nice because we have 2 of each size since we're doing 2 bikes. And if we ended up using the same jet, which I'm going to start out with the 105, we're just going to go spicy right off the bat, and hopefully that's where she dials in at. And yeah, so I did see some complaints saying some people were saying they didn't fit right in their carb tuners, but everyone was saying on the 22mm everything was going good. So fingers crossed, let's hopefully it goes good. So let's get at this beast. All right, guys. So the verdict's out. There's absolutely nothing wrong with these jets. These ones from Amazon work just fine. So I'll be making sure I put that link in the bio for you guys to help save you guys some dial hairs, since Faster Minis didn't have them in stock. So not quite sure if I covered this in an earlier part of the video, so we're just going to recap here real quick. So we bought the carbs from Faster Minis, and we bought what we thought were the jets that work for this carb tuner. As you can see here, it says Mikuni VM 20, 24, 26, 28, right? Well, I'm thinking, well, you know how things is. Sometimes they just don't add in the next one. Like, why wouldn't it work for the 22? It's got every other one on there. So why wouldn't it work? So we bought the, the jets and all that, and well, obviously they didn't work, and we're like, so we called them up, or we'll message them or whatever, and they're like, yeah, that's the only carb that actually takes, standard size jets. So they said go to your local shop. We're actually on back order. Go figure. And yeah, you guys already know the story to that. So we got off Amazon. Works good. We're gonna spice her up right off the get-go with the 105. Okay, there's this mess in my. Oh.
Started about 2 turns out.
All right, so I think we're actually moving it now. See how it went up, see how it went down, and now
I over adjusted here. Should move in small increments of like quarter turns, and make sure you keep track of how much you're turning it.
It went back down again, you heard it? Yeah, see, so that's what you gotta watch for. It's not always instant, so that's why you gotta watch.
Which is right.
You want to achieve almost the highest idle.
But you want the highest idle. And then you can go back and readjust your actual idle to where you want it.
Up. Sounds pretty good right there. Ooh. So I really think that our pilot's pretty good. We're not having too much issues with stumbling at the very crack. Nothing more than you normally would on your car. Guys, so you got the carb installed. Now it's time for the carb review. So I ended up getting both bikes done. And where our jetting ended up being is actually we ended up with a 110 for the main. And then we left our pilot alone at a 15, which is different than your Key-in carb as far as sizes. So a 15 is relatable to, I honestly don't even know for a Key-in carb. But they're completely different standards and numbers, so don't try comparing your 38 to 40 that comes to the, as far as your 18 mil carb to this 15 on a 22 Mikuni carb. So alright, so let me clarify, we did end up on the 110 as the main jet at the end. We originally started with the stock 95 jet, might say 107, but it's actually a 95 in these carbs. Did not run right at all. So we just shot straight up to the 105, cleared up a lot, still had a little, something to it, and I personally thought at the time that was running rich, so I bumped it down to a 100, and then she started getting worse again, so I was like, all right. So it's like, well, let's go the other direction. So we threw a 110 in her, and she ran great. Now, one thing to keep in mind, these are Amazon jets, and some people, I don't know if it'd be true or not, but they did say that the Amazon jets can run a little bit different in size, possibly. How true that is, I don't know. All cleaned up. We ran our tubes down here, and we ended up following a line, because even though you have a shutoff valve here, if your carb does overflow, it has a backup where it will bleed out this bottom one here too, which we realized on this bike, which was our second one we did. So we got it both bypassing the exhaust, so if we were to wheelie out way vertical on a hill, whatever happens, it's always past the exhaust. Obviously on this one we did not do that, but I don't know, we'll maybe we'll have to just maybe redirect it a smudge. We'll see what we could do. We're not too worried about it. Shouldn't be a big deal. But anyways, regardless, both bikes run great. I'll start them up for you. Both these bikes have full exhaust systems on it. This one here has an FMF. The other one has Pro Circuit. Both BBR U-flows, stock rev box, stock displacement. They're both 110s. They're both 2017s. Yeah, and they both work great on this jetting. So I'll start this one up for you real quick right now. This is a cold start. So sounds good. Oh, it's cold. So I mean, very, very responsive as soon as it warms up just a little bit. We both have around about 60-ish hours. Mine's like 63. So you can see, I mean, that's no choke. I mean, we got it probably, all right, it is about 70 degrees in the garage. So it's not really a cold start, but whew. This one, mine complains a little bit more when it's cold, but I actually already did a full rip on this bike here. With the boy, we were messing around in the yard for 30 minutes, gave her, you know, as far as, you know, gave her the beans, you know, gave her the business, and she runs great. So as soon as she warmed up, she was good. So, and on the day it was a little colder, we pulled that choke. She fired right up, no problem too. So the choke works great on these things. And I'm honestly super pumped about these carbs, and I won't even, probably even, when I have to get a bigger, when I have to redo the piston and all that and the cylinder, I'll probably just bump up to like the BBR 133 or 4 or 2 or whatever it is. And that way I can still hold on to this carb, because my buddy was actually just telling me the 26mm carb has that flap where the choke's in the way, and he says his looks way more rougher inside. Like this 22mm got really a nice smooth passageway for air to flow in. So I think I'm all about keeping smaller displacement and yeah, keeping this thing ripping on the 22 since we already have it. Was an easy install. First one we were learning everything, you know what I mean? Like you guys were, you know, watching the video. Second bike we did, I mean, I blasted through it. It was so easy doing it the second time, knowing what I was doing and all that. Sorry this video is kind of long. All right, everyone, so I hope this video helped you out. There's going to be a link in the description for the jets, as far as a link or whatever, so you guys can, you know, click on that, buy them, you know which ones you're going to get, the right ones. Still definitely recommend Faster Minis. If you do buy the carb from them, they say, hey, how'd you hear about us or whatever, blah blah blah, say, hey, Full Speed Impulse did an awesome video on you guys on that carb tuner, and he did a great job. I'm gonna be sending an email too and all that stuff. And also we have a link in our description for our merch, that anything that is bought will go back into what we do, so we can keep on pumping out awesome videos for you guys. I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you later.